time is equal 0, cosine of 0 is equal to 1, psi also is almost 0. So we are left with these two equations. That is to say, at the very first moment of motion, drive is maximum, times 0. Drive is maximum, force. And displacement has already an initial displacement condition, but we said that we are forcing from rest, from equilibrium point, from x equals 0, x equals 0, x equals 0. So there's clearly a problem to me. Not only that, if we consider not only the first instant of motion, we can see that the drive and elastic force are opposite. And I specified driving force on the first row and elastic force on the third row of the bracket. And you can see that one is opposite to the other one. So back to the real swing. Apart from the first thrust, the parent pushes child always in sync with gravity, if you remember. In gravity, in this analogy, acts as the elastic force. So drive and elastic force are in sync, not opposite, when we are starting the system somehow. Hence, the model, to me, has a problem, and this is what I investigated. I repeat here, there are two problems given by the equations currently used. First one, equations give zero force when displacement is 0. So how to start the system? Two, equations say that when displacement is maximum, for example positive, the drive is maximum too and positive, and opposite to elastic force. This to me is not physically true, if you remember your common experience. I represent how? Here's the slide. I represent visually what the current theory states to better understand the phenomenon. So this is the pendulum. These are the forces, force and gravity as per equations that are currently used. Okay, so maximum force and maximum displacement, positive, maximum positive force and maximum positive displacement, and gravity is opposite. Gravity equals the elastic force here in the spring mass damper system. And this is how I represented the common experience on the swing, where the parent should push as hard as he can the child when the child is in the maximum forward position. That is not what you experience normally. That is maximum positive drive at maximum positive displacement. Do you recognize yourself in this representation? Not me. Not me, of course, because the parent somehow pushes the child when the child is in his maximum backward position, and the force exerted by the parent is synced with gravity, not against it. So the symbolic set correction. So we have to manage the model. I really dreamed to have found the solution when I thought that the pivotal point was imposing that at time is equal 0, displacement is 0, while force is maximum. This is accomplished choosing a sign as displacement that gives 0 when time is 0. So as the Euler formula is this one, a raised to jx equals cosine più j sine, the new chosen displacement must be this one, xx equals sine of x, which is the real part of exponential e raised to jx over j, or obviously the real part of minus negative j times e raised to jx. Hence the symbolic set becomes this one, of course. And please note that the force is still modeled as cosine. We are only acting on the displacement, velocity, and acceleration, but not on force. So therefore, let's plug that set into equation of motion. We have this relationship. So once again, the usual substitution, the chain of equations that leads us to this formula where one term, one bracket begins to go. Notice that the highest power of the variable, notice that the highest power of the variable is now in first position at denominator. And so, to me, first problem, mathematical beauty, is solved. But still, we have some problems at numerator. Once again, we separate modulus from phase. And we go to phase correction. We study the phase. And we obtain these relationships that summarized in a table are this one. That is the same as usual, but shifted of 90 degrees. Just before plugging psi into equations, I recap. We came to this point via this equation, this set of substitution, thanks to this equation. So you can imagine my desperation when I realized that for time equals 0 and psi equals minus pi over 2, the set of force and displacement becomes that one. That is to say, the very exact point that I was trying to compute. So half victory for mathematical beauty, but still no luck for phase and physical meaning, because the final set of equation in the bracket it's absolutely identical to the one in the first place in the current theory. So I thought, well, if the current theory admits that at time equals 0 displacement is not null, I can take this position, but I rewrite the equation of motion for the swing reality, namely maximum positive drive for maximum negative displacement. Or better, maximum negative drive for maximum positive displacement. This subtle observation is up a lot the comprehension of the phenomenon, because the cosine that describes the periodic nature of the phenomenon is visually synced with the swing position. And this is the schematization. Once again, we have a spring mass damper system. The mass is in the maximum positive range position, x max positive, and the drive is at its maximum and is negative. Elastic force is always at its maximum and it is negative. Dissipation is positive, and acceleration of the mass, not inertial, acceleration is negative. So in this configuration, the equation of motion becomes minus negative elastic force as per the arrows, plus positive dissipation force, forces, minus driving force equals negative acceleration, because it's pointing backwards or on the left, times mass. If we move the block acceleration times mass on the other side of the equation, it becomes inertia. That is to say, that one. But if we use these signs, we end up in trouble. In fact, resorting the equation, we obtain such writing. Hence, we have to keep in mind the symbolic formulas to plug in. So restarting from the previous version of the equation, we have to think at the real part of them. So this is the set I propose, and note that the One thing that has changed is the minus sign in the modeling of the force, which is negative somehow. So displacement is a positive cosine when you think at complex notation. Acceleration and forces are negative cosines in this set of substitution, but velocity, to me this was an achievement, is a negative sign. In fact, if you expand the formula j omega x e raised to j omega t, you will find the formula you can see where the term is actually a negative sign. So we have to keep in mind this information.